Longtime BTBS fans, you might suddenly find an unidentifiable sense of calm, enjoyment, and peace as you view your computer screen and absorb the sounds through your ears. And that's because our fine football talking program is finally experiencing, once again, the dulcet tones and immense knowledge of Brandon BK Kiley, who has graced us with his presence back on BTBS for the first time this year. BK, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's been too long. Long time. First time since dropping from the show, kind of thing. So yeah, it's good to be back, man. Happy to do it. Perfect timing. Season just around the corner. The most anticipated Mizzou season that I can remember. And I'm so excited for it, man. The timing for everything coming together the way that it has is not a Mizzou thing. Like the fact that Eli Drinkwitz was hired when he was and had the runway that he did, and NIL was implemented when it was, and then Burden, and then Cook, and then now the 12-team playoff at the same time that the SEC expands. And oh, by the way, that means that Mizzou gets given the stakes of what's in this league, the easiest schedule you could ask for within the parameters of still playing an SEC schedule. Like, dude, absolute insanity. Absolute insanity.
I always talk about astral assistance in my Count the Ifs piece, and boy, there's some astral assistance as far as scheduling goes and timing in general. We will get into that. What I wanted to do with BK today, we could have just brought him in here and just chatted it up about Mizzou football for 40 minutes and called it a day, or we could be organized and have a little fun with it. So we're going to play a little game called Fill in the Blank. I'm going to ask BK questions about Missouri football with a blank in the statement, and BK is going to fill in the blank, and we're going to see what he thinks about it. Okay, so let's start at the top. Of course, when you talk about football, you have to start with the quarterback. It's the most important position in sports, certainly in football, and ours is Brady Cook. So let's talk about Brady Cook. BK, my first statement for you is Brady Cook is the blank quarterback of the SEC.
At least fourth best quarterback in the SEC. I want to say third, but I'm not sure I actually believe it. But at least a top four quarterback in the SEC, and that to me is good enough. That to me means that he's a top 15-ish quarterback probably in the country, and that is, again, good enough. I think what you see, like, Georgia has a better quarterback than you. Bama has a better quarterback than you. I think Ole Miss might have a better quarterback than you and Jackson Dart. I'm not totally sure I buy that or not, but it's like I think it's comparable either way, and you have Luther Burden. So, like, if I wanted to really get frisky, I would go with Brady Cook. The thing that I don't believe is that Quinn Ewers is better than Brady Cook. And I know that's a very controversial opinion because a lot of people actually like Quinn Ewers. I do not. I think Quinn Ewers is the worst part of that football team, and I think if Texas went with Manning instead of him this year, they would probably have a real shot at winning the national title. But instead, I don't think they're going to make it to the SEC championship game. So those are my overall thoughts on where he kind of stands among the top SEC quarterbacks. Where are you at on this?
I mean, I think Brady Cook is a product of the tremendous talent that is around him. And that is not a shot at Brady Cook. Obviously, he bullied his way through a 2022 season when he could not throw the ball reliably. So he's got the ability to win games when he is hobbled. We've seen the bum shoulder. We've had the bum leg last year. I do think he's good. I don't think he's a Jalen Milroe who basically, again, willed Alabama's offense into relevancy and points basically on his own. Jackson Dart. I kind of feel like Jackson Dart is a product of his system and his talent as well. And yeah, I guess Carson Beck. I mean, Carson Beck's got a lot of talent too. Here's the thing.
I think Beck's legitimately good. I underestimated Beck going into last season. Beck is just like an efficiency machine. He's not sexy, but he just makes every correct throw, and it's on time and it's accurate. So, like, it's hard for me to put Cook over that when we've seen those things are not always the case with Brady.
Yeah. And efficiency is the most important thing you could have in football. Obviously the deep ball is always going to be sexy. Explosive plays are always great, but you need to make the safe throws and move the ball. And Carson Beck does that. So I am with you on that. I would say Brady Cook probably floats somewhere in the 2 to 5 range for me. because you have to take into account the weapons around a quarterback as well. Cook has shown an ability to make clutch throws, but he also has guys who can make clutch catches and clutch runs. So I would say somewhere to the 5. Yeah, I'd be with you on that. Is there a way that he could bump up to best quarterback in the SEC? That would be unseating Milroe and be unseating Beck.
I'd be really surprised. I just don't think he has that kind of ceiling. And I would be curious, like, let's step aside from the SEC this year. Can Brady Cook be remembered as the most important quarterback in Mizzou program history? Is there a way for that to happen? Because that would be unseating the likes of Chase Daniel and Brad Smith. And that doesn't mean he's better than either of those guys, because I think right now you can make a pretty strong case that Brad Smith is actually the most important quarterback in the history of the program because of what that led to, right? I do think that is more likely than him becoming the best quarterback in the SEC. I don't think there's any chance of him becoming the best quarterback in the SEC this year, but most important quarterback in program history, maybe depending on what happens after 2024. That's the way that he's remembered.
That's the thing. Yeah. You win a playoff game and you set off recruiting and success for years and years with Eli Drinkwitz, and it's because Brady Cook was a quarterback for that. Yeah. I believe that. But again, that's a question for 5 years from now. Which,
sure. Yeah.
Whatever. But getting back to the now, let's look at the running backs, because obviously Cody Schrader is now a San Francisco 49er. And although Mizzou returned a bunch of young guys in the running backs, they also portaled in 2 guys, 2 former 1,000-yard rushers, and Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll. So BK, my question for you, Mizzou's running backs are going to be
different. They're going to be different. I think for the first time since like 2019, when they had more of a like legitimate committee with Roundtree and Beatty, I think you're going to see more of that this season. And I think that it's not going to be like a 50-50 split, but I don't think you're going to see any guy that has the Cody Schrader role or the Tyler Beatty role, where it's just going to be one guy is in all 3 downs. Yeah. I don't really expect that going into this season. So I think the biggest word that I would use to describe the way that the running backs will operate this year compared to previous seasons under Eli Drinkwitz is that it's going to be different. And that doesn't mean bad, but different for sure.
I mean, senior running backs, or I guess I should say running backs in their last year under Eli Drinkwitz, absolutely explode every single year. But that's also because they don't have any other real options other than Larry Roundtree in 20. But it was the COVID year, and that was weird. You brought in 2 for a reason. I think Nate Noel seems to have locked up the first position anyway, but Marcus Carroll, he's not coming here to sit, and he's got a skill set that's a little bit different than Noel. I don't know. It is going to be different, because I think for the first time ever, we're going to see a legitimate platoon of running backs. And I don't know how Curtis Looper wants to break that up, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be just one guy all the time, which will be nice. I'd like to see multiple guys in there. Of the running backs,
the skill of this offensive line like has a chance to be the best one that they've had under Eli Drinkwitz. And if that ends up being the case, like, even if you're taking a step back from some of the guys that have been in this system previously in terms of just their overall talent, we know how this works, Nate. Like, running back is considered to be the most replaceable position for a reason. It's because so much of what they do is a product of what your offensive line is able to do in front of them. And if that line is better than what it's been in recent seasons, you might not notice much of a drop-off, despite the talent in the backfield potentially not being quite at the same level as it once was.
No. I am curious if Jamal Roberts sees the field, or Tavoris Jones. I mean, is there any chance that we see either of those guys coming up?
I got to imagine you'll see some of them, right? But it'll be kind of similar to like what you've seen in recent years, where did you see a second or a third running back in the past couple of seasons? Technically, yes. Did you see it often? No. So I think it'll be kind of like that, where the way that they treated Cody Schrader last year will just be the way that they treat both Noel and Carroll combined. And then the third running back this year will be essentially the way that they treated like Nate Pete last year. And you see him occasionally, but it's not often.
No. So we go from the running backs to wide receiver, and there's no doubt that this is just a chock full of talent room. Probably one of the most talented receiving corps Mizzou's ever seen. And of course, the crown jewel of that room is Luther Burden. And I think we're all pretty confident that this is going to be his last year as a Mizzou Tiger, which is great. So, kind of looking through the tea leaves and projecting a little bit. At the conclusion of this season, Luther Burden will be remembered as the blank receiver in Mizzou history.
I think it's the best
Oh,
receiver
wow.
in
Okay.
Mizzou history.
Okay.
I mean, you look through some of the numbers that he's been able to post, especially last season, but where he's going to be at this point, dude, it's almost hard to say that he won't go down as the best receiver in Mizzou history. Just as long as you think last year wasn't a fluke. Like, that's the biggest thing. It's just, if you think last year was a fluke, sure, okay. Most receiving yards in Mizzou history, Denario Alexander, 2,700. Luther Burden currently has almost 1,600. Most receiving touchdowns by a wide receiver in Mizzou history, Denario Alexander, 22. So far already, Luther Burden's at 15. Most yards in a single season, I don't think he's going to touch that. That was Denario with 1,700. Burden had 1,200, though, last year, which was the third best of all time. So if he simply puts together a season that is reflective of what he did last year, he will have the most yards by a receiver in Mizzou history, and he will have done so as one of the biggest recruits in the history of Mizzou's program, who basically started this whole stretch of like sustained winning now over the last 2 years, potentially, if that ends up happening this season. And if you do that on a team that goes to the college football playoff, you'll be remembered for the importance of it. And you'll be remembered for the greatness of it. You'll be remembered for the hype that was associated with it. I don't really think there's anything that he doesn't check off on the checklist of boxes that like a Denario Alexander or a Jeremy Macklin does. So yeah, I think at that point, if he just has the season that we all expect him to this year, he'll go down as the best wide receiver in the history of Missouri football.
And, potentially the most beloved 5-star, that committed out of high school. I know when Mizzou gets nice things, they always complain about how it's going to go wrong. And you can point to a lot of different things about highly rated recruits who did not do as well as they should in both football and basketball. And you heard that when Luther Burden committed, and we all told him, shut up, just enjoy it, right? But not only was he hyped, but he has delivered so far. And to have a guy who goes a full 3 seasons without, he had his breaking in period freshman year, break out in sophomore year, and then whatever he's going to do this year, Blaine Gabbert was injured for most of his first campaign, and then he bolted after the second. DGB didn't get to finish his career here. Sheldon Richardson was injured kind of that last year. Like, there's always something that seemed to hold them back. You have a blue chipper who goes 3 full years and potentially takes Mizzou to places that they've never been to before. Forever hero, forever put a statue up, well, probably after he dies, but that level of commitment, I think he actually would probably enter the era of a Brad Smith or a Chase Daniel. And I know you've talked about this before on the show, because he was that beginning point, that entry point of the elite recruiting. And boy, that would be enough for Mizzou fans.
That's the thing, man. Like, the part that you said about he stayed is such an important factor, because I remember when he first committed to Mizzou, a lot of people were like, okay, he's going to get his money. He's going to take it. And after 1 year, he's going to go to Georgia. He's going to go to Alabama. He's going to go to Texas. He's going to go to Oklahoma. Like, he can go wherever he wants to, right? Because he got the money that he needed from the school that he wanted to go to. And then he's going to realize this is not the best fit for me. I can go elsewhere and I can end up having all the success in the world. And then year 1 was what you expect from a freshman wide receiver, man. It's hard. It's so hard to translate. It's why, like, we'll get to probably the defense on the here in just a little bit. But like Williams Nwaneri, I don't think you're going to see a ton of him this year, man. And that's okay. He's a 5-star freshman, and freshmen, generally speaking, aren't very good at football when they get to the collegiate level. Yeah. And frankly, Luther Burden wasn't very good as a college wide receiver in his freshman season. And so they had to use him at or near the line of scrimmage, and he was not in the slot, and it was just not the best situation for him. No. But what I loved about it is that he stayed, and he saw it through, and he said, you know what? I think that I can improve, and our offense is going to improve. And by seeing it through, he becomes a beloved member of this team. He becomes a beloved member of the Missouri community. He's forever going to be beloved because he was able to stay. If he had gone to Georgia or Oklahoma, like, he would have been a great player at either of those schools. It would have been different. He would have been remembered differently, and he would not have the same legacy that he already will be leaving with here at Mizzou. And I think that matters. And I don't know if 18, 19, 20-year-old kids really think about that very often. And I'm not even sure that they should. But for somebody that is now 31, that has a kid of my own, like, it's something that I think about. And I love that he did it. And it just makes the story that much better. And for me, it makes it that much more likely that he goes down as one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in the history of the program.
Currently sitting at a 66% catch rate, 15 touchdowns, 1,500 yards. Yeah. 8.1 yards per target. That is good.
And imagine what that would be if not for the first year.
Serious, man. He had a 60% catch rate his freshman year. He was averaging, 5 yards per target?
Yeah, dude.
Boy.
I mean, he was at the line of scrimmage for
all
everything.
the time.
He never got anything down the field.
He was getting handoffs because they couldn't figure out how to get him. He couldn't get open. Boy, he made the leap, man. I'm so excited to see what he could do this year.
That's the thing. Like, he's probably going to be better this year. Like, progress isn't linear. We need to remember that.
Yeah.
But the odds are very much in favor of last year was a glimpse into what he's capable of, and he's probably going to be slightly better this year, even if not more productive than he was last year.
I mean, the only question is how many targets does he get? Because there's a lot of talent there too, but it's also your best player on a good team. Like, you're going to find ways to get him the ball. So yeah, I can't wait. Let's talk about some other impact dudes, specifically on the offensive line. I know you talked about how great it could be. And a lot of that, the hesitancy was that you lose Javon Foster to the NFL. You lose a 6th-year guy who made a surprise leap in Xavier Delgado. Left side was the best side of the line last year, and they're gone. But we got 2 new additions, as well as everybody that was on the right. So my question for you, BK, is Marcus Bryant and Caden Green are blank additions to the offensive line.
Necessary additions to the offensive line. If you hadn't added those 2 guys, I would have had real questions about what this offense was going to be capable of in 2024, because you have all of the offensive weapons you could possibly ask for. This wide receiver room is as deep as maybe any in the country, honestly. Like, they go 6, maybe even 7 deep in terms of guys that you trust to make plays for you on any given night. And I mean, it's like 2 guys deep that are legitimate studs, but the rest of them you could see contributing in a meaningful way. But none of that really matters if you can't protect your quarterback, and it certainly doesn't matter in this offense if you can't run the football. And if you can't run the football when people know you're going to be running, it's just not going to work. The question that I still have about it, and I remember Cole Kubelik, I think, was the one that has talked about this a little bit over the offseason, said one of the things that Missouri's offensive line did so well last year was work that zone running scheme as a unit. And that's so important, and it takes a lot of reps together to get really good at it, because it's a feel thing as much as it is anything else, right? There's a chemistry among that offensive line of knowing, okay, when do I work to the next level? When do I pass off this double team? And that's something that we just don't know about this particular unit. The right side is basically intact. So center over, you should be good in that regard. But left tackle, left guard, it's an open-ended question as to what that's going to look like. I think you can make a pretty strong case. They might be more talented at both of those positions than they were at this time last year. And now it will come down to, what does that chemistry look like? But they were necessary additions, because if they didn't add those guys, I don't know that the offense would have looked the way that we are currently expecting it to.
I mean, no disrespect to, Javen Richardson or Logan Reichert, but, that's not who you're looking towards to lead a playoff caliber offensive line. And I know, the Eli Drinkwitz has said, Caden Green has said when they came in, he was willing to play tackle, but he was also willing, hey, put me where I'm going to work. And that's when they went, all right, we're going to go get a tackle. So it's, even the coaching staff recognizes that they could have upgraded even beyond Green, which,
by the way, that's awesome. That's a really cool thing that Caden Green was willing to do that, because there are a lot of guys that just say, hell, it happened to the Chiefs with Orlando Brown Jr., right? He was a right tackle for the Baltimore Ravens and said, I want to be a left tackle. I'm not willing to accept any contract here unless you're going to make me the left tackle. And they weren't going to do that because they had one. And so some guys just say, I'm a left tackle. That's the prestige position. I'm playing there and only there. Caden Green could have done that. He came in, he was big man on campus, dude. Like, he could have basically named the position that he wanted to play on Missouri's offensive line, and they would have allowed him to do exactly that. But for him to be willing to say, hey, I'm I'm open to playing wherever you need me, whatever is best for the team. That is the kind of chemistry, that is the kind of leadership, honestly, that they had a year ago that you
Mhm.
just always kind of wondered. That's the intangible stuff that you can't put your finger on. It, it it's a good start to what that offensive line chemistry could be, that he's willing
Yeah.
to accept a position that's a little less glamorous by playing on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap up the offensive side with a bigger question on our coordinator. His name is Kirby Moore. He was great last year. We expect him to be great this year. But my question for you, BK, is Kirby Moore will be blank in 2025.
If everything goes as anticipated, excuse me, Kirby Moore will be a head coach elsewhere in 2025.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It sucks for us as Mizzou fans that you had a really good offensive coordinator and they went on to better pastures. But the truth is, this is his goal. And this is what I've always said about Missouri's job in general. And it used to be about the head coaching position. I have changed my tune on that. I think Missouri is a really good job. But we can get to that at a later time. Kirby Moore going on to get a head coaching job elsewhere means that the top candidates that are available next offseason as offensive coordinators to either make the jump up or that got fired as previous head coaches, this now becomes a super attractive offensive coordinator gig because you've now shown, hey, just like if you previously worked for Nick Saban as his offensive coordinator and you could go on to get a head coaching job elsewhere, hey, come rehabilitate yourself. Come on over here. Hey, you're an up and coming hot shot coordinator. Come on over here. Blake Baker was a nobody. He got let go. Like it didn't work out for him at his other stops. Came here, became one of the highest coordinators in the country because of the job that he did here. Oh, you like what Kirby Moore did? Oh, you want to become a head coach? Come do that. Yeah. So if you do a good job here and you've got the talent now to be able to do so, Eli will let you do your thing. You've got some parameters that you've got to work within for sure, but the offense works. And if you're the one that is calling the plays, you can go on to be a head coach. And I think that's what Kirby Moore is going to be doing next year.
Yeah. It's wild. I can't, there's a lot of things about this program that I still cannot believe, just as somebody who has followed this team, for 30 something years, imagining this place being a destination job for coaches of pretty known, names that, talented guys, not hires that you have to talk yourself into. It's a wild thought. But that's just the elevated level that Eli Drinkwitz has brought to this program, where you bring in 4- and 5-star kids and you bring in coordinators who know exactly what they're doing and go on to better things and therefore open you up for more. That's it's wild times that we're living in, man. And I love it. And we'll see. Yeah, I think you're right. If everything goes well, he will not be here and probably a head coach. Okay, so let's go to his defensive counterpart, because we do have a new defensive coordinator. Blake Baker, like you said, is no longer here. And Eli Drinkwitz had to make another hire in Corey Batoon. So, BK, from your view, Corey Batoon is a blank hire for Missouri's DC.
Risky. This is one that I'm really curious to see. This is really the side of the ball that I think most Mizzou fans have legitimate questions about going into this season. I think Blake Baker was a really good defensive coordinator. I also think Blake Baker had some blind spots. And that's okay, because the blind spots that he had, I think, were due to aggressiveness. And I tend to prefer that. Like, just aesthetically, my personal sensibilities, how I prefer to watch football, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like, hey, if you're making mistakes and giving up explosives because you're trying to create explosives through blitzes, through pressures, I'm okay with that. And I'll live with it. And I think it's part of why they've had so much success against the likes of Georgia, for example, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to punch back. And Missouri had that ability with Blake Baker as their defensive coordinator. I just don't know what it looks like with Corey Batoon. I think a lot of what it is as a defensive coordinator is a preparation, right? Being able to go into a game plan wise and say, we're taking this away. I think Blake Baker was really good at that. But B, adjustments. And those in-game adjustments at this level are something I just don't know what Corey Batoon is going to be like in that area. Like, hey, if you're Missouri has like 5 linebackers that could play for them this year, maybe even more than that. Mm-hmm. If a couple of them, this just isn't the game for them, because they're all kind of different in terms of what they bring to the table, you're going to make the adjustment. If you go into a game and, hey, this is the type of game where we need a little bit more juice from the interior, are you willing to just go with Chris McClellan and Marquise Gracial and just say, you know what, like give up a little bit of the beef, get a little bit more juice inside. If it's just more of a, hey, we just need a lot of beef, are you willing to do that? Like what are the specific adjustments that you're willing to make in game or over the course of a season, depending on what happens with injuries? I don't have the answers to those questions the way that I felt like we kind of did with Blake Baker. And so to me, it might be a really good hire, but it is certainly a risky hire.
Is there any part of you that feels better about the fact that he worked with Kalen DeBoer for so long, who is now Alabama's defense coordinator, or sorry, Kane Womack, who's the defense coordinator? Or is it just, I know he used to work there, I'm still undetermined on what he can do?
Yeah, it's the latter for me. I mean, does it make me feel good that a guy that is clearly respected and good at his job hired him to be his defensive coordinator? Of course. Yeah, like that makes me feel good. He's been around guys that run quality defenses.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it looks like at this level against these opponents with these kinds of stakes. And that is something that it's really hard to replicate, man. Like until you get those reps, it's like having a transfer that comes in. Like I don't know how anybody can be certain what Marcus Carroll or Nate Noel will look like in this offense at this level. It's just hard to know, right? There's a change in terms of the level of competition that you're going to be going up against. And so if that's the case for a player, the same would also be true for the guy that's calling the plays. It's still football at the end of the day, but some of the things that work at a group of 5 level against group of 5 quarterbacks don't necessarily work in the SEC. So I'll be just curious what it looks like.
I mean, if anything, it was a philosophy hire. Corey Batoon loves to blitz the hell out of everybody, and just like Blake Baker did. But yeah, to your point, it's the in-game adjustments, it's calling the game, it's managing the players, all that stuff. At least you still have DJ Smith, who's the co-DC, who's got at least some hands-on experience with that, for whatever that means. But yeah, it's a wait and see on that one. So let's talk about the defense. We could go position by position on this thing, because there's so much addition and difference. So instead, I'm just going to ask you just a big broad question, and we can break that down into little pieces or as you see it. But Missouri's 2024 defense is blank compared to Missouri's 2023 defense.
I'm trying to think of the way that I want to phrase this. Missouri's 2024 defense is almost certainly less physical than the 2023 defense at corner. And I think that is something that I am really curious to see how it plays out. Because I think one of the most underrated aspects to football in 2024, regardless of level, but certainly once you get to the higher levels, so college and the NFL, if your cornerbacks tackle, it makes such a difference in the running game now, because the number one goal for offensive coordinators is to make your corners tackle. And if that means getting wide receivers on end arounds, or if that means like off tackle runs, like everything, like the scheme that is sweeping across the country, both NFL and in this level, Mizzou's doing it, is that zone running scheme. A lot of that is to the edges for a reason. That's by design, right? And so what does it look like when you go from the corners that Missouri had last year that tackled everything, dude? Like everything that came their way, they were going to the ground. And if somebody made a catch, they were coming to the ground. It just was, the yak didn't exist. What does it look like this year when that is different? I don't know. And so that's something that I'm very curious to see, but I'll to answer the question directly. Missouri's 2024 defense almost certainly will be less physical at corner compared to last year. And I think that will have real ramifications for them. And I do think it likely takes a step back because of that.
Yeah, I agree. You do not just replace 2 NFL corners with anybody and say, yeah, we're good. You don't know that. You don't know that. And I think for me, corner is the biggest worry in my mind. I've said it to anybody who's asked, any speaking engagements, I always bring up the corners. Like, we don't know. Toyana Pride, athletic, don't know. Drayden Norwood, I liked what he did as a third corner, over 160 snaps. I don't know what he's going to do over 700. And Nick Deloach, great story. Meteoric rise, awesome. He's a long jumper. He has not played an SEC season. I do not know. Other than corner, is there anything else that you are concerned about when it comes to this defense?
I mean, yes, like edge rusher.
Sure.
The depth at edge rusher, losing Darius Smith. I actually felt pretty good about edge rusher as of like a week ago because like Johnny Walker's a good player. I'm certain of that. I think Zion Young's going to be a good player. And then you have Kelly and Smith, and you've got like depth there with Joe Moore, who got real snaps for you a year ago, and then Williams Nwaneri with whatever he can contribute. Like you felt pretty good about that, the depth. But now you basically have three guys, and if there's any injuries, like it gets real thin real quick, and you might have to bump some defensive tackles out to the edge. Other than that, just the unknown of what you have at linebacker going into this season, I think you'll probably be fine. These guys got snaps last year. And linebacker is not a spot that I generally am overly concerned about. But those are probably, because we talked about corner, that's a real question to me. So yeah, I would say depth at defensive end. I guess I could probably say defensive tackle to a degree. You know, like last year you had one of the best defensive tackle rotations in the country.
Yep.
It was deep. At the top of it was Darius Robinson, who was just a delight in every possible way. And then he kicks out and he does all but you had so many players at the position that Darius Robinson could move outside all the time if he needed to. So yeah, I'd say defensive tackle is another one that you can look at, but none of these are all very first world problems, man.
It is.
Like these are, if 3 years ago, I would have been like, defense tackle set, dude. Missouri's good there. But yeah, there's certain positions that you look at, you're like, ooh, for a top 11 team in the country, is that good enough? Mm-hmm. And I think the answer to most of them is going to be yes, but they're open-ended questions. What's your biggest non-corner question?
I mean, I can't. It's edge rusher, and this comes back to, when you have an elite defense, how does it do it? And there's a lot of different ways you can play football. I understand that. But the best way to have an elite defense is to affect the pass. And the things that you do to affect the pass are have cornerbacks and edge rushers. And what are our questions? It's cornerback and edge rushers. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but like, you know, we had 2 NFL corners. We had 2 of them. That has never happened on the same team. That has never happened at Mizzou. And there was a reason why this defense was so good the past 2 years. It was because of Ennis Rakestraw. It was because of Chris Abrams-Drain. There's a lot of other guys there too, but that was one of the biggest things. It allowed the defensive edge rushers to get there with time because they were sticking to their man. And we are restarting at those 4 positions. We always talk about this. Clemson made its run, his national title runs, with an elite quarterback, elite receivers, elite edge rushers, and elite corners. They did it all with the passing game. They fiddled around with the offensive line. You had a couple of linebackers that were big, like a couple of running backs who, did okay, but like it was the passing game. They focused on that. They brought in elite talent there. That's what made their run. Missouri's got the receivers. We think they got the quarterback. We just don't have that other part. And I'm concerned. Not that we don't have a guy. Obviously, Johnny Walker's great, and you can bring pressure from the inside too. I think we got some good tackles. What's it all look like when you put it together? And I don't know. I think it's going to be lesser than last year.
So here's a follow-up question for you. If Missouri's defense is really good, they will be really good this year because of blank.
They'll be really good
to play your game of fill in the blank.
Yeah, I think they're going to be really good if they bring pressure from other places. Linebacker, I'm looking at you, Khalil Jacobs. I'm looking at you, Dalen Carnell. I'm looking at you, Chuck Hicks, because you don't run fit really well, but you're a guy on fire when you go blitz the quarterback. I think it's
Tristan Newsom, who was a maniac in that regard.
I think they are successful if Corey Batoon figures out how to create unique pressure without relying on an edge rusher to do it. Because I like Zion Young. I don't think that's him. Johnny Walker can do it. I don't think he's going to be the only guy who can, do 15 sacks and call it a day. So if they have unique ways to bring pressure and disrupt the pass, then I think that's what makes them elite. If they can't do that, normal, fine, top 50, something like that. It's not keeping me up at night. Like you said, this is first world problems. And with this schedule, you can win 8 games by just kind of farting your way through most of them. But like, if you want to make it an elite run, if you want to make a memorable season, that needs to happen, and we just don't know it. Okay, let's talk about the head man. We haven't talked about Eli in a while. Here's my question for you, BK. Eli Drinkwitz is a blank coach in the SEC.
Dear Rock M Plus listeners, readers, and subscribers, we are thrilled to announce our first ever digital Mizzou Football review magazine. Inspired by the iconic newsstand staples like Athlon, Phil Steele, and Street and Smith, our team has created a PDF file jam-packed full of content for you to learn about the most anticipated Missouri football season maybe in history. Checking in at about 100 pages, we have in-depth previews of all 12 opponents, analysis of each position group, profiles of newcomers, exclusive photographs, features like a retrospective on the 2014 team, the evolution of Faurot Field, Luther Burden's place in Mizzou history, and more. We also have an analytics Q&A with Bill Connolly of ESPN, the founder of Rock M. We also have college football preview content and much more. This digital magazine is available now. It is $15 for purchase, with discounts available for premium Rock M Plus subscribers based on your membership tier. $10 for monthly members, $5 if you have an annual membership. Now is the time to become a member to secure your discount on this one-of-a-kind product today. We know that you're going to love this magazine, and we can't wait to have it on your devices. MIZ.
This is a really difficult conference to ask this question about because I was ready to say some wild claims.
Oh, okay.
And then you look around the conference and you're like, oh yeah, that's not gonna be okay. You can't go there. Eli Drinkwitz is a top 5 coach in the SEC conservatively.
Okay. And
I think that Eli Drinkwitz is probably closer to a top 3 coach in the SEC. We have had our journey with Eli Drinkwitz.
Mm-hmm.
I think Eli has become a very good head coach, and I think it took him a while to get here. I don't think Eli Drinkwitz was very good as a SEC head coach when he first got the job at Missouri. Agreed. I think he struggled in a lot of different areas. I think he was a very good recruiter. I think he was a very good salesperson. I think he did a good job of getting buy-in from his players, and those are all really important things. I don't think he had a great command over what he wanted to be as an offense at this level. I think he needed to hand that off to somebody else to have a better handle on in-game decision-making processes. Mm-hmm. I think he needed to figure out what he wanted the identity of the defense to be, and it took him a little while to get there. And I also think he needed to get the dudes, and he had to buy himself time to get there. And now that he has the dudes, like, I think you're seeing the way that he operates can work. He's a culture guy. Like, ultimately, that's what Eli Drinkwitz is, because everybody's got their thing, right? Some guys are scheme guys. Other guys are culture guys. Other guys are just flat out like, hey, I'm just going to get you the dudes, and we're going to see how far this can take us. And that's the case mostly for college football and basketball. I think Eli Drinkwitz is a culture guy, and he's built a really good culture at the University of Missouri, and he has hired some really good coaches now at the University of Missouri as well. So I'm not going to put him in like the Kirby category. Kirby has everything, dude. Like, he's a recruiter. He's an unbelievable schemer. He's got the culture, even though off the field there's stuff. Brandon Kiley is a potentially bad human being, but also an excellent football coach. Yeah. And if you want to win football games, hire him. And I think Kalen DeBoer is phenomenal, dude. Like, that guy, I think, is going to do so well if Bama doesn't get in Bama's own way there. Mm-hmm. Like, I think he's going to be really, really good there. So I would have Eli Drinkwitz like right after that. I would have him above Lane Kiffin personally. I would rather have Eli Drinkwitz as my head coach than Lane Kiffin. And Texas is a blind spot for me, as you can probably tell by the fact that I don't have them going to the college football playoff, and I think the quarterback's not particularly good. I don't really know what to do with them. I think their offense is good. I think that they are extremely talented, and I think there's a decent chance that they take a step back this year, because last year they had incredible talent on the outside and a excellent defense. So
Mhm.
in terms of the talent that they have there. So yeah, I would say top 4 in the SEC. Where would you have them?
I'd say top 5. Top 5, top 6.
Would you have Sark over him?
That's the thing. And like you said, there's a lot of different ways you can be a head coach. I think Sarkisian is a tremendous play caller.
Yeah.
Now his offenses haven't been nearly as good as I think they should be at Texas, but I think he still has it. When he gets into his bag, you're like, oh, geez, him and Kiffin, you're like, oh my God, we don't need them to start rolling. So yeah, I mean, I like Kalen DeBoer. I don't know how I like Kalen DeBoer at Alabama.
Culturally, that's going to be an interesting fit.
It is. And like Hugh Freeze does not have his fastball like he used to, but he still recruits super well. I don't think Brent Venables is all that great, but he's gets the benefit of.
I think he's getting fired after this year.
Well, just the casual heater over here. Oh my God.
Have you looked at their schedule, dude?
It's brutal. It is absolutely brutal.
He could be an excellent head coach and have a really good season and go like 7-5.
He plays 5 of the top 6 SEC teams according to SP Plus.
Yeah, he plays Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, and LSU. And oh, by the way, those final 3 teams that I mentioned are the final 3 games of the season.
Yeah. They
play Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, and LSU in 4 of the last 5 weeks of the year. Like, good luck.
Awful.
Good luck.
Awful. But like, I guess the thing for me is when, you ask, what's the best head coach, you can answer that in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
I do think, Drinkwitz has shown, at least in the 4 years, he built a program, he elevated recruiting, he changed state laws. He was able to recognize his strengths, bring on some great coaches. I think he's a top 5 head coach in the SEC, which probably puts him top 15, top 20 in the country. Here's my question for you, BK. We know Mizzou. We know how to recruit at Mizzou. We know what it used to be. We know what it is now. Given Eli Drinkwitz's location, where he is, the history of Missouri, and who he's going against, Eli Drinkwitz is a blank recruiter in the nation.
Oh, top 5 probably.
Yeah,
honestly,
I would agree.
I think Eli Drinkwitz, and when you say it like that, I love what you said. He said he built a program. That is so underrated as a skill because it's so unbelievably difficult to do. Some guys can take like somebody else kind of built up the program and got the players there, and then they get in and they're like, okay, yeah, I know how to win with this.
Yeah.
Like if you got everything kind of set in place, but the other guy couldn't quite get it over the top.
Yep.
Some guys can come and be like, yeah, I got it. We're good here. I'll be all right from here. Eli Drinkwitz didn't have that, dude. Eli Drinkwitz was building from the ground up and had to get everything in place to be able to be now in a situation where they could potentially go to the college football playoff. And so like that means that he could be the type of coach that any team would hire. And maybe that's another aspect to thinking about this is just for Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz is a top ranked coach in the SEC. Like if you could just pull somebody else's coach to be at Mizzou, I mean, he might be like number 2, like with Kirby 1 and him 2, maybe because of everything that we know about how he operates at Mizzou. But yeah, dude, his recruiting is, I never thought this was possible. Like I just assumed there was, I didn't know what the ceiling was specifically on Mizzou's recruiting, but I figured like I don't think you're going to get higher than like top 20-ish on an annual basis. And he's like, he's finding a way to do that. Dude, he's going into Texas and stealing offensive linemen
from DFW
that are 4-stars. Like he's going into Florida and finding 4-star receivers that like the in-state schools wanted. And they're like, yeah, I would like to go to the middle of the country and play in Columbia.
He took a kid from Pennsylvania, quarterback from Pennsylvania. Who does that?
The stuff doesn't make sense. And so for him to be able to get kids from like East St. Louis and the Kansas City side of the state like that, yeah, that's really great and necessary, by the way. You needed to be able to do that. Now he's going and taking these kids from out of state and doing so from right underneath the nose of some of the best schools in the country. And it's like, all right, dude, like you're special. It's a different level.
That's what made the difference for me, because you could point to the NIL laws and go, okay, you got the home state special, oh, they're getting money in high school. And none of these guys that he's bringing in are getting that. It's just, I don't know how, man. you have, I don't know. I do think that when you're looking at his recruiting and how it is evolved, how it has evolved over these past 4 years, really the big jump off point was when Jacob Peeler came on the staff, and that's what really cracked open Florida. So I want to give credit to Peeler as well and his nasty wideouts, but also Pennsylvania and Texas. Like, how are we doing this?
And also credit to Eli for hiring him.
Absolutely,
like, that's the other thing, right? Like, if you have guys that are really good recruiters on your staff, there's a decent chance there's a reason for that. And the reason is because the head coach puts an emphasis on having those individuals in those places to make sure that he has good recruiters on his staff. And that's something that can't go too under the radar as well, is that Eli Drinkwitz, from the time that he got the job, really, we saw when he started collecting what his first staff was going to be. We're like, okay, you can kind of see stylistically what he's going after. He wants guys that are going to really get after it on the recruiting trail. Hell, one of the reasons why some of the coaches left after year 1 or 2 was because he required more of them on the recruiting trail, and they maybe weren't up to the task. So yeah, it's really impressive what he's been able to do in that regard.
I love it. It makes me care about recruiting, which I usually didn't for 20 years of my life. And now I do. And that's a lot of fun. So let's get you out of here with, of course, the tough question. Mizzou's record at the end of the regular season will be blank.
You want to go through it real quick?
Let's play the schedule game.
We used to do this. I remember last year before the season, we did very dangerous things where we said, when's the loss coming?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were like, why can't they go into the LSU game undefeated? Tell me why.
Yeah.
And we just kept doing it. We kept doing it, and it happened. And they ended up going into the game undefeated. And then we were like, all right, now let's name the other losses. Why can't they continue? And it went pretty well for Missouri last year. All right.
Good.
Murray State. I think that's probably going to be a victory.
I feel good about that one. Yeah.
All right. Buffalo. I think they're probably going to be able to pull that one out.
Yes.
Boston College. I'm feeling pretty good about that one as well.
Probably sticky for a little bit, but that's going to be a win.
Oh, yeah. Some of these are going to be ugly games. We should make that very clear. Missouri early in the season against non-conference opponents. I mean, guys, go look at the schedule last year. Go look at the final scores of those early season games.
Middle Tennessee.
Yeah. It's not going to be fun. You're not going to enjoy watching these football games, but they'll win, and that's ultimately what matters.
Yep.
Vandy, they'll win.
Yeah.
Texas A&M is just a game that I hate in every possible way. It's going to be ugly. The winner is going to have 23 points on the board.
Yeah.
It's 11 a.m. It's at a place where there's going to be 170,000 people there. I think they win that game. I think they're the better football team. And that's probably where a lot of people will change what their record is compared to mine. I don't know if you're one of them, Nate, but
that is one of my 3 likely losses. Just because it is the first real game. Boy, I'm sorry, first 4 games on the schedule.
Wow. 3 likely losses. Okay. Negative Nate is back. Okay, cool.
I never went anywhere. I'm always here. But it's the first it is
the first real game.
The first road game. It is the first real opponent. Yeah. It is at A&M, which is still early in the season where they're still feeling chesty about everything. They got a really good football coach in Mike Elko. It's never been a problem with the players at A&M. It's always been about the coach. And they finally got a good coach. The things that are in your favor, you do come off a bye. You are going to have your full attention on this thing. I have full faith that the staff is going to. I don't know how the team is going to react. I'm not saying they're going to lose. I'm just saying this is the spot where you go, let's make sure we get this one.
For sure. It's a very losable game.
Yes.
And if for anybody that would predict them to lose it, even going into that one, I'll probably be like, yeah, I get it. It's a at best 60-40 game in one way or the other, depending on how you look at it. The next week at UMass, I still am just it is one of the most shocking and unacceptable scheduling decisions by any administration in the history of college football. They'll win the game, but my God, can we not? Auburn. win to me.
Yes,
I think
win.
you got to win that one.
Yep.
At Alabama.
Boy, that's number 2.
For me, that's number 1.
Okay.
It's just, do we need to really break this down too far?
Again,
like
Alabama does not have a player problem.
And they don't have a coach problem either. I'm pretty confident in that.
The problem is always the coach, and I don't think they have a bad coach. So
yeah. I think they have an excellent coach, in fact.
Yeah.
And
on the road,
at this point, I think they will be playing for their college football playoff lives because I think they're likely going to have a loss already. I think they're going to lose to Georgia in week 4. Yeah. And so if they have that loss already on their resume, if you have more than 2, dude, it's going to be extremely hard for you to get in this year, especially in this version of the SEC where there's probably going to be 4 teams or so that end up having 2 losses. So I think that's a game that Missouri probably loses. Next week, Oklahoma. I'm assuming this is your number 3.
That's number 3.
And I think that's nonsense. I think Missouri.
I love it.
I think Missouri whomps them. I think this is a game that Missouri will win. I think at this point in the season, it is the game that will effectively eliminate Oklahoma and will end their season and will potentially, as I said earlier, end the tenure of their current head football coach, who I am not a particularly big fan of. So yeah, I think that Missouri wins that game, and then we can continue from there. South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas. I think they win out. I think they go 11-1.
Do we close out fire coach Oklahoma, fire coach South Carolina, fire coach Arkansas?
Oh, I like that.
Or is it now acceptable to lose to Mizzou? I don't know how the SEC views these things.
I kind of feel bad for 2 schools this year, 3 schools really, 2. In terms of what their schedule looks like going into the season. It's like legitimately unfair. What they did to South Carolina and what they did to Florida. Come on, man. These schools are not the types of universities that can handle this kind of losing, especially at this point in their respective coaches' tenures. Like, dude, they got to get it going this year. And instead, they are heading into this thing, and it is just Goliath after Goliath. And I don't know how either of those programs gets above like 5 wins, even if they're good.
Have
you looked at Florida's schedule, dude?
It's so bad. But they
Miami, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State.
See, they didn't do themselves any favors by getting Miami and Florida State on there. So that's on them. Everything else, they did really get screwed.
South Carolina, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Missouri, and Clemson. That's 7 games against top 20 opponents.
You scheduled Clemson. I don't know. Why would you do that?
You are so unforgiving, and I respect that about you. Missouri scheduled UMass on the road, so we all
also dumb. Also dumb. I'm an equal opportunity dumb caller. That is, I don't know what Stirk was smoking. I know he loves the Northeast, but like, boy, I'm just really glad we got out of that Miami game. That's that was asking for it, but that's next year.
9-3, huh?
No,
you said 3 losses.
Okay. So let's call it that. You have potential 3 losses.
Oh, we're doing this analytical thing, right? Where you're like, you could get up to 3 losses, but the average is actually probably closer to 2 because they're like 60-40 games.
Yes. Don't you miss me? All right, fine. I don't think they lose to Oklahoma because that offensive line is garbage. And I don't care how old they are, how far into the season is. You cannot portal in an entire offensive line from the G5 at Oklahoma and think you're going to be just fine. I know they like Jackson Arnold. It's not going to work out. I don't think they lose to Oklahoma. I think they do pull out a tight win against A&M. I think it's going to be a dogfight. It's probably going to come down to the last possession, and we don't have thicker kicker anymore. I don't know what it's going to look like, but that's my danger zone right there. And I do think they lose to Alabama because it is Alabama at the road. So if you're asking me my predicted loss, I think there's going to be 2, but I can only see 1 on paper, and that's Alabama. It would be very I'm avoiding the thing that I want to say. It would be I wouldn't be surprised if they go through it, beat A&M, lose to Alabama, beat Oklahoma in an emotional game, and then trip up on like South Carolina or Mississippi
Dude,
State.
that would be
and
classic Mizzou. I think they're above that now, but
I didn't
hope
want to
they
say
are.
that.
I really hope they are.
I didn't want to
that.
say it, but like it ain't easy on some of these, going on the road. And Mississippi State's
dude, think about all of the games that Missouri's played at South Carolina. It's always
funky.
Yeah.
And Mississippi State is playing a brand of football that is just so annoying. So annoying. I don't know if they're going to be any good, but it's going to be annoying. And you're like, we beat Oklahoma and A&M. Why the hell are we stuck with these guys? Like, I think there's going to be 2 losses, but I can only see one, and it's Alabama.
I think that's fair. That's the one that I think most Mizzou fans would point to and be like, yeah, it's Alabama. You're on the road. It's not going to be an easy scenario for you. I think one thing that I love about the schedule, the way that it's set up, 2 of your most likely losses are coming off of the bye. Like it just everything's set up this year in a way, other than the Darius Smith injury, essentially, where it's like, hey, for the first time in our lives, the gods of football are looking down upon Missouri. And I don't know if or when that changes.
Yeah.
But as of today, August the 20th, as we're recording at 9:40, it feels really good to be able to say that, man. And it's as excited as I've been to watch Missouri football in my entire life going into a season.
So can I get you to say the words in the microphone? 11-1?
Yeah, I think Brandon Kiley, believe that the Missouri Tigers will finish the 2024 regular season with an 11-1 record and will be representing the SEC in the college football playoff. They will be one of the 12 best teams in the country, and there will be no arguments by the College Football Playoff Committee about their schedule being too weak, because they will have gone 11-1 against it. If you go 9-3 against it, there will be legitimate arguments against you. If you go 11-1, there's no argument. You will have defeated every SEC opponent not named probably Alabama, and you will be going to the college football playoff. And I believe that is exactly what Missouri will do this year.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Now they just got to go and make it happen. BK.
Now they do the hard part of the playing of the
play the games. Play the games. Yeah.
By the way, one thing that I do want to say.
Yes.
Last year we talked about this a lot, Nate, because I thought it was really important and it was unexpected and just this unbelievable journey that Missouri football took us upon. Don't lose that. Yeah. Don't lose that this year, because it's not going to feel the same way that it did last year. Last year was unexpected. It was surprising. That Kansas State kick basically made everything else possible. You went into the Memphis game and left the Memphis game as a Missouri fan, probably thinking to yourself, I don't know if this team's very good. And ultimately they won 10 games, went to the Cotton Bowl. We know how the season went. And it was just one of the teams that I'm going to look back on and say, it's as much fun as I will ever have watching Missouri football. This is going to feel different from day one. There are going to be real expectations, real anticipation, and every game is going to feel like a relief when you walk out of it with a win. Instead of feeling like, oh my God, that was amazing, it's going to feel like relief when you win. Like if you go down to Texas A&M and it's a close game and you find a way to win, it will not feel the way that the Kansas State game did last year, where it was jubilation. It will feel like relief. And that is a different way to watch football. It is a different way to experience college football. It is a way that we haven't experienced college football probably since like 2014.
Yeah.
And it's not as much fun, to be totally candid, but at the end, the fun is in the winning. And if Missouri does a whole lot of winning this year, you're going to look back on it and say, hot damn, that was amazing. But yeah, just know going in, it's going to be different than last year, and it's going to feel different. And you're not wrong or unique in feeling that way. That's just how it goes when you go into a season with real expectations, as opposed to a team that last year went into the season outside of the top 25.
Yeah. The fun wins come at the end when you're playing for a national championship. Yeah, that's where the fun comes in. So, yeah. Okay. Well, BK, I'm glad you're back for this show. It's good to talk to you again. Where can people find you? What are you doing these days?
So, as of the release of this, it will be officially announced. I am going to be writing this year for the Alton Telegraph. So I'll be writing some Mizzou content over there. So if people want to see it, it's just one column a week. It's nothing crazy, but I'll be writing one Mizzou football column every single week for the Alton Telegraph. So if you want to find that, you can follow me on Twitter at BK Sports Talk. I'll certainly be sending out the links, but you can also check it out on their website. And then, of course, as always, you can find me on 101 ESPN weekdays from 11 to 2. We'll be talking plenty of Mizzou football throughout the season as well over there. So if you want to listen to anything Cardinals, Blues, but certainly Mizzou as well this fall, we'll be talking about that on 101 ESPN in the great city of St. Louis.
That's right. Well, we appreciate you coming back. Let's give them one last MIZ while you come out because you're here. So MIZ.
ZOU.
Love it.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. We'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.